Something has shifted. You can feel it, but you can't quite name it. It's not louder. It's not more intense. It's not that overwhelming wave of insight that used to crash over you and leave you breathless. It's actually quieter, suspiciously quiet. And that silence, that strange, unfamiliar calm, is making you wonder something you're almost afraid to say out loud. Is it over? Because here's what nobody in the spiritual community actually tells you. They'll walk you through how an awakening begins, the sleepless nights, the moment your old identity stops fitting like it used to, the relationships that quietly fall away, the version of yourself you can never quite go back to being. They'll describe all of that in extraordinary detail, but almost no one talks about what it looks like when it ends, what it feels like to be standing on the other side, and more importantly, how to recognize that you're already there when it's happening to you. Carl Jung, who spent decades mapping the hidden architecture of the human mind, called this entire process individuation. The long, often painful journey of becoming who you truly are, beneath all the conditioning, all the survival strategies, all the versions of yourself you built to make it through. And what Jung found waiting at the far end of that journey was something that almost nobody expects. We're going to get there. But first, I need to tell you something about sign number 5 on this list, because it directly contradicts something the personal development world has been telling you for years, and it might genuinely change the way you see your entire spiritual journey. Stay with me. Here are 7 signs your spiritual awakening is finally over. Think about who you were before all of this started. Be honest with yourself. For most people, being right was never just about having the correct answer. It was a survival mechanism, a way of proving to the world and to yourself that you were worth listening to, that your perspective mattered, that you existed in a way that deserved to be taken seriously. Jung described the ego as the part of us that builds its entire sense of safety around external validation. And here's the part that surprises most people. The early stages of spiritual awakening don't dissolve that ego. They just give it a spiritual makeover. Suddenly, it's not about needing to be right about politics or sports or who said what. Now it's about needing to be right about consciousness, about energy, about who is awake and who is still sleepwalking through their life. The ego doesn't disappear. It just finds more sophisticated armor. But when the awakening genuinely completes its first major cycle, something shifts that is almost impossible to fake. You stop needing the argument to go your way, not because you become passive, not because you no longer care, but because you've stopped needing other people's agreement to feel secure in what you know. You can sit across from someone who completely disagrees with you, listen to them fully, stay genuinely curious about their perspective, and walk away with your inner world completely intact. No spiral, no hours of replaying the conversation, no quiet need to go prove them wrong, just peace. That kind of groundedness is one of the rarest forms of inner freedom a human being can reach. That freedom took everything to build it. This one is so subtle that most people dismiss it entirely, and that's exactly why it's important to name it clearly. Because the moment you start genuinely enjoying a Tuesday morning, with nothing particularly special happening around you, no peak experience, no sign from the universe, no profound revelation, something has already shifted inside you, whether you've recognized it or not. The spiritual seeker's mind is almost always oriented toward the extraordinary, peak experiences, synchronicities, cosmic signs, meaningful coincidences, because the seeking itself becomes a way of avoiding the present moment.
which by comparison always seems too plain, too ordinary, too small. Jung wrote about the tension between the persona, the version of ourselves we perform for the world, and the deeper self, which he believed was never somewhere else, never in some elevated state, never in the next breakthrough. It was always here, in the actual texture of real life as it is, not as we wish it would be. When your nervous system finally relaxes enough to let the present moment be enough, when you laugh genuinely at something small, when you notice the light shifting in the late afternoon and feel moved by it, quietly, without needing to document it, without needing to explain it to anyone, that is not a small thing. That is integration. That is one of the most beautiful signs that the storm has genuinely passed. Sign number 5 is still coming, and I promise it's going to challenge something you've probably believed about yourself for years. Stay with me. The loneliness that follows early spiritual awakening is one of the most painful and least discussed parts of the entire process. That particular ache of feeling like you've outgrown your old world but haven't yet found the new one, the strange grief of realizing that the people you love most, genuinely love, simply cannot follow you to where you're going. That loneliness was real, and it deserved to be honored, not bypassed, not spiritually reframed before you were ready, because you were going through a genuine loss, the loss of the identity that once held your entire life together. But something changes when the cycle matures. The loneliness doesn't necessarily disappear, but it stops being something you need to escape from. Because somewhere along the way, you built a relationship with yourself that is stable and warm and deeply honest, the kind of relationship that doesn't require constant company in order to feel intact. Jung believed the most important relationship a human being could ever cultivate was with their own unconscious, the unseen, unacknowledged parts of the self that had never been given space, never been welcomed, never been allowed to exist. When that inner relationship is genuinely healthy, solitude stops feeling like returning, like coming home to something familiar and safe. You can spend an entire evening alone and feel authentically at ease, not numb, not performing contentment for yourself, not scrolling to fill the space, just okay, genuinely, quietly okay with your own company. Most people never get there. For most of your life, silence was probably something you filled as quickly as possible. Music, scrolling, conversations, anything to keep the noise going, because silence had a way of surfacing everything you weren't ready to face yet, all the unprocessed emotions, all the things you kept too busy to feel. Here's what surprises most people. Early awakening actually amplifies this discomfort, because the more aware you become, the louder the unresolved material gets when nothing is drowning it out. Which is why so many people in the early stages report feeling more anxious, not less. More restless, not more at peace. But when the cycle turns, silence starts to feel different in your body. You notice you no longer reach for your phone the moment you're alone. You can sit in a room with nothing playing and feel present, genuinely present, rather than restless. Jung described this state as being in direct contact with the deeper self, the part of you that exists beneath the constant chatter of the ego, beneath the noise, beneath the performance. And he believed this contact was only possible in the absence of relentless external stimulation. Silence isn't emptiness. It never was. It is the fullest state a human being can inhabit once they've stopped being afraid of what lives there. Okay, here it is. The one I've been building towards since the beginning of this video.
And I need you to really sit with this one because it goes against almost everything the self-development world has ever told you. We live in a culture that has turned personal growth into a permanent state of emergency. There is always another habit to build, another trauma to heal, another level to unlock, another version of yourself to become before the current one is allowed to rest. And the spiritual community has created its own version of this exact same pressure, just wrapped in more beautiful language, more mindful, more healed, more evolved, more aligned. Jung had a concept he called the shadow, the unconscious collection of all the parts of ourselves we've rejected, buried, or been told are unacceptable. And he believed that most self-improvement is actually just another form of shadow rejection. The ego trying to fix itself into something more acceptable, rather than genuinely integrating the parts it's afraid to look at. When the awakening cycle matures, something genuinely radical begins to happen. You start to feel that you are fundamentally okay as you are, right now. Not because you've achieved some perfect state, not because all the work is done, but because you have stopped treating yourself like something broken that needs to be fixed before it earns the right to rest. Growth continues. It doesn't stop, but it stops being driven by the quiet terror that you are not enough yet. And that is when real growth actually begins. Because you're no longer running from something. You're finally moving toward something. There was probably a time when a single critical comment from the right person at the right moment could send you into a spiral that lasted for days, replaying it, dissecting it, defending yourself in your head against someone who had already moved on and completely forgotten it even said it. That sensitivity was not weakness. It's worth saying that clearly, because it was actually a sign of how hard your nervous system was working to protect a core wound that most people carry their entire lives without ever examining. The wound that says your worth is determined entirely by how other people see you. Jung called this the persona wound, the damage that accumulates when we spend so long performing an acceptable version of ourselves for the world that we begin to believe that performance is all we are, which means any criticism of the performance feels like a direct attack on our entire existence. When the awakening cycle integrates, something real changes in the way criticism hits your body. You can hear difficult feedback, even unfair, unkind feedback, and process it without your whole inner world collapsing around it. The sting might still come. That's completely human. That doesn't go away, but it passes in minutes instead of days. And you no longer need to convince the other person they were wrong in order to feel okay again. Because your sense of who you are no longer depends on their verdict. You know what you know, and no one else's opinion of you can reach deep enough to change that. This is the one I told you to stay for. And from the outside, it doesn't look dramatic at all. It looks like someone baking bread at midnight just because they felt like it, dancing alone in their kitchen to a song no one else will ever know they loved, writing something, 3 pages, maybe more, with the full and quiet certainty that no one will ever read it. And feeling completely satisfied by that. We live in an era where almost everything we do has a potential audience attached to it, where the line between genuine experience and performance has become so blurred that many people have genuinely lost the ability to do something purely for the love of doing it, without at least part of their brain already composing the caption, already thinking about how they'll describe it later, already performing the experience while they're having it. Jung spoke extensively about creative expression without external validation as one of the most direct pathways to the deeper self. Because the moment you create for an audience, even an imaginary one, you've already started editing yourself into something acceptable rather than something true. But when you start doing things purely for the joy of doing them, when you spend an afternoon on something that leaves no trace and feel completely at peace with that,
when you stop needing the experience to be witnessed in order for it to feel real, that is not a quirky personality trait.
that is a sign that you have returned to yourself in a way that most people spend their entire lives searching for
and never quite reaching. Here is what I want you to carry with you long after this video ends.
None of these 7 signs look like enlightenment from the outside. None of them arrive with a sudden, undeniable feeling of having finally made it.
There is no certificate, no moment where the universe taps you on the shoulder and says, "Well done, you're done now." The completion of an awakening cycle is quiet,
Almost embarrassingly ordinary. And that is precisely the point, because everything you went through, every dark night, every identity collapse, every relationship that didn't survive the version of you that was emerging,
every moment you sat alone wondering if any of this was even real, all of it was leading you back to something you were never actually separate from in the first place: yourself. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are."
not the healed version, not the version that has read all the right books and done all the right practices and checked all the right spiritual boxes. The full, unedited, completely human version that contains both the light and the shadow and has made peace with the fact that both belong.
These 7 signs are not finish lines. They are mile markers.
Proof that you have been doing the work. Proof that something in you has genuinely shifted. Proof that the person listening to this today is not the same person who started this journey.
You made it through the fire.
And this ordinary, peaceful, surprisingly undramatic moment you're standing in right now, this is what standing on the other side actually looks like. Welcome home.
If something in this video made you stop, if one of these 7 signs made you quietly think, "That's actually me," hit the like button.
Because it genuinely helps more people who are going through exactly what you just heard find this video when they need it most.
Which of these 7 signs hit you the hardest, and which one do you feel like you're still working toward? Drop it in the comments below. There are no wrong answers. And you might say, the one thing someone else needed to read today.
If this is the kind of content that makes you think differently about psychology, about consciousness, about who you actually are beneath everything you've been told to be, subscribe to Fractal Wisdom, because we're only going deeper from here.